WWE gives final farewell to Hulk Hogan after tragic passing at 71 to cardiac arrest. Hulk Hogan dies at 71. Wrestling world in shock. WWE legend Hulk Hogan has tragically passed away at the age of 71 after suffering a cardiac arrest at his home. Fans and fellow wrestlers are devastated. In this emotional tribute, we reflect on the life, legacy, and impact of the immortal Hulk Hogan. From his rise in the golden era of wrestling to his unforgettable matches and iconic persona, we take a deep dive into how Hogan shaped sports entertainment as we know it. This video also features behind-the-scenes stories, reactions from the wrestling community, and the lasting mark Hogan leaves behind. The world of professional wrestling has stood still. An eerie silence has blanketed the arenas, locker rooms, and homes of millions of fans worldwide. For decades, one name echoed louder than any other when it came to charisma, color, and chaos in the squared circle: Hulk Hogan. And now, that voice has been silenced forever. At 71 years old, the Immortal One, the man whose 24-inch pythons once carried the weight of an entire industry, has passed away following a sudden cardiac arrest at his home. The news broke like a lightning bolt through a dark sky, shaking not only the foundations of WWE, but the very spirit of everyone who ever grew up pointing a finger to the heavens and yelling, "What ya gonna do, brother?" In a world so often fueled by adrenaline, betrayal, and bravado, Hogan's departure feels like the end of a myth. He wasn't just a wrestler. He was wrestling. Hulk Hogan wasn't born in a wrestling ring, but he was reborn there, transformed from a burly, aspiring musician named Terry Bollea into a household name who transcended wrestling itself. He didn't need to fly off the top rope or perform death-defying stunts. Hogan was a force of nature, a symbol of might, a cultural icon wrapped in red and yellow. His death doesn't just mark the passing of a man. It's a symbolic sunset on an entire era of sports entertainment. Tributes poured in within minutes of the announcement. WWE issued a heart-wrenching statement confirming the loss, calling Hogan a foundational pillar of this company and the man who turned a niche sport into global pop culture. Vince McMahon, often seen as Hogan's greatest ally and fiercest critic throughout the decades, reportedly broke down in tears upon hearing the news. Sources say McMahon, now semi-retired but still deeply involved behind the scenes, canceled all meetings for the day. He was the spark that lit the fire, a backstage staff member whispered. Without Hulk, there's no WrestleMania. No Rock. No Cena. No Austin. It all began with him. And in many ways, that's the truth. When Hulk Hogan ripped his shirt, flexed his muscles, and cupped his ears to the roar of thousands, he wasn't just playing a character, he was creating a phenomenon. It was in the 1980s, during wrestling's explosion into mainstream entertainment, that Hogan carried the WWE on his bronzed shoulders. He wasn't the most technically gifted wrestler. He didn't need to be. Hogan's power lay in presence, in charisma, in the ability to make you believe, just for a moment, that good would always triumph over evil. But now, that champion of good is gone. And as news of his death spread, it felt like the entire industry froze. Monday Night Raw opened with 10 solemn bells. No pyro. No theme songs. Just silence. A single spotlight shone down on the ring where a red and yellow feather boa lay draped over a steel chair. Michael Cole's voice cracked as he delivered the tribute. Tonight, we don't just mourn a man. We mourn a legend. We mourn the immortal. Behind the scenes, current superstars were reportedly inconsolable. Roman Reigns, who'd recently returned to television after months of silence, posted only a single word on X, formerly Twitter icon. Seth Rollins, who grew up watching Hogan body slam giants and conquer villains, reportedly left the arena early, struggling to maintain his composure. Becky Lynch shared a childhood photo of herself dressed as Hogan, red bandana tied proudly around her head, with the caption, "Thank you for making me believe I could do this too." Backstage agents, some of whom traveled the roads with Hogan in the 80s and 90s, gathered in a quiet corner of the arena, sharing stories not for the cameras, but for the catharsis. He was larger than life, but man, he always made you feel like you mattered, one veteran said through tears. He shook every hand, signed every autograph, even when he was running on fumes. The impact of Hulk Hogan isn't limited to wrestling rings or WWE arenas. His reach spread far beyond the ropes. Hollywood felt it. From movies like Suburban Commando and Mr. Nanny to his unforgettable appearances on television shows and music videos, Hogan was a crossover superstar before the term was even fashionable. He was a Saturday morning cartoon, a breakfast cereal mascot, a walking brand that transcended age and nationality. In the world of action figures and neon tights, he was the face every kid saw in toy store aisles across the globe. But what many forget or never knew is that Hogan was a man who carried the burden of fame with equal parts pride and pain. His legacy is glittered with championships and pay-per-view records, but also shadowed by controversies, lawsuits, and personal demons. And yet, even in the face of scandal, there was always a segment of fans who stood by him. Who separated Terry Bollea, the flawed man, from Hulk Hogan, the timeless hero. In recent years, Hogan had taken on a quieter role within the company. No longer a weekly presence on WWE TV, he became a symbol. A guest at Hall of Fame ceremonies, a host of special events, an occasional legend called upon to boost morale. But those who knew him best say that in private, Hogan missed the ring, missed the roar, missed the feeling of standing in front of a crowd and hearing them chant his name. He was always reliving it, said one close friend. Even in the hospital, he'd joke about getting back in the ring one last time. He lived and breathed it until the end. And the end, tragically, came too soon. Paramedics were called to Hogan's home in Clearwater Beach, Florida, after a 911 call was made by his longtime partner, Sky Daly. Reports indicate that Hogan had been feeling chest discomfort for days, but brushed it off. He always said he was too tough for pain, she told a close friend. He thought he was invincible. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was too late. The man who once survived 1,000 body slams, who overcame surgeries, betrayals, and the brutal grind of the wrestling lifestyle, had fought his final match. As the world processed the news, tributes began to flood social media. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson posted a heartfelt video, visibly shaken, calling Hogan his childhood hero and the man who showed me what charisma truly looks like. John Cena released a statement calling Hogan the foundation upon which we all stand. Even Stone Cold Steve Austin, who rarely breaks kayfabe online, tweeted, "Thank you for paving the way, brother." And it wasn't just wrestlers. Sylvester Stallone, who worked with Hogan in Rocky III, said in a teary-eyed Instagram post, "We lost a warrior today. A real-life superhero." Mr. T, Hogan's tag team partner at the original WrestleMania, simply wrote, "Rest in power, brother." Perhaps the most heartbreaking tribute came from Hogan's children, Brooke and Nick. In a private post later shared with WWE's permission, they wrote, "He was our dad before he was Hulk Hogan. We shared him with the world, but we never stopped being his kids. He was larger than life to you. To us, he was just dad. And we loved him with all we had." Plans for a memorial show are already underway. WWE is reportedly preparing a full tribute episode set to air live from Madison Square Garden, the arena Hogan helped make famous. Sources close to the company say Vince McMahon and Triple H are coordinating with multiple legends, including Ric Flair, The Undertaker, and Bret Hart, to appear in person. There's also discussion of erecting a permanent statue at WWE headquarters, something fans have called for over the years, but which now feels inevitable. The Hall of Fame will undoubtedly dedicate its next class in Hogan's memory. And perhaps, in a way, Hogan's greatest match didn't happen at WrestleMania or in front of millions. It happened every time a young fan raised their arm in the mirror and believed they could be strong, that they could be brave, that they could overcome, because that was Hulk Hogan's true legacy, not just in title belts or ratings, but in inspiration. He gave people hope. He gave wrestling a soul. And in his final days, Those close to him say he found peace in knowing he'd lived a life that mattered. He died surrounded by love, by family, by quiet. The man who once thrilled crowds with thunderous leg drops and electrifying poses left this world not with a roar, but with a whisper. And maybe, just maybe, that's the way he would have wanted it. Because while the ring may now be empty and the arena dark, somewhere out there, the echoes of Real American are still playing. And the immortal spirit of Hulk Hogan lives on in every cheer, every memory, every little kid still dreaming of becoming a hero. The days following Hulk Hogan's death have been a whirlwind of mourning, reflection, and celebration, a celebration of the man who forever changed what it meant to be a professional wrestler. WWE's creative team, often tasked with building feuds and fantasy, found themselves writing something very real, a final goodbye. And in that finality, there was reverence, silence, and soul. The WWE Universe, typically split into fans of heels and babyfaces, factions and favorites, became united in grief. From Tokyo to Toronto, from Lagos to Los Angeles, fans flooded forums, social media, and tribute pages with their memories. They weren't just recalling matches, they were remembering moments. The first time they saw Hogan lift Andre the Giant over his head. The first time he pointed a trembling finger at the villain in the ring. The first time he said, "Train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and believe in yourself." That phrase, once seen as just a gimmick, took on new meaning in death. It became a mantra for millions who grew up with Hogan as a father figure, a superhero, and a guide. For children in the 80s and 90s, Hulk Hogan was more than TV entertainment. He was a beacon of strength in uncertain times. And now that beacon had gone dark, the day of his funeral was as surreal as it was sacred. Clearwater, Florida, Hogan's longtime home, became the unofficial capital of wrestling for 24 hours. Streets were blocked off, traffic diverted. Local businesses hung yellow and red streamers on their windows. But inside the church, it was quiet. No flashing lights. No chants. Just soft organ music and rows of mourners, some in suits, some in wrestling gear, all united in sorrow. Vince McMahon arrived with Triple H by his side, both men dressed in stark black. Ric Flair was seen holding back tears as he took his seat near the front. Bret Hart, whose complicated history with Hogan had been well documented, was one of the first to rise and speak. "We didn't always see eye to eye," Hart said, his voice cracking. "But Hulk was a titan. And whether you loved him or loathed him, you had to respect what he built. What he sacrificed. What he carried." Dwayne Johnson was next. The Rock. The man many believe inherited Hogan's role as wrestling's ultimate crossover star. But on that stage, there was no swagger, just sorrow. "When I was 9 years old," Johnson began, "I watched Hulk Hogan body slam the impossible. And I thought to myself, one day, I want to do that not just in the ring, but in life." He was strength. He was showmanship. He was heart. And today, we say goodbye to the heartbeat of an industry. Brooke Hogan spoke on behalf of the family, standing tall but visibly shaken. "To the world, he was Hulk Hogan," she said, gripping the podium. "To us, he was Dad. He made our lunch. He drove us to school. He told us stories that ended with, 'And that's why you never trust a manager.' We shared him with all of you. And we're so grateful we did. Because he didn't just belong to us. He belonged to everyone." As the service ended, the screen behind the altar lit up with images of Hogan through the years. Not just in the ring, but at charity events, hospital visits, fan meet and greets, children's hospitals, and military bases. A montage of memories, backed by the song Real American, filled the room. And when it ended, the room rose in unison, not in applause, but in tribute. One last standing ovation for the man who once made arenas tremble. Back at WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, the atmosphere was no less somber. Stephanie McMahon ordered flags to be flown at half-staff. A bronze statue of Hogan was unveiled in the lobby, depicting him in his signature pose, feather boa draped over his shoulders, mouth wide open in a roar. A plaque at its base read simply, "Immortal. Icon. Irreplaceable." But the tributes didn't end there. WWE organized a special edition of SmackDown titled Immortal Forever, a tribute to Hulk Hogan. The show opened with the locker room standing at the entrance ramp. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, Cody Rhodes, Rhea Ripley all standing shoulder to shoulder. Even retired legends Edge, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle stood in silence. Triple H stood in the center of the ring with a mic, barely able to speak. "There will never be another. Not in our lifetime. Not in any lifetime," he finally said. The rest of the show was less a wrestling event and more a living memorial. No feuds. No storyline. Just vignettes of Hogan's greatest moments, testimonials from his peers, and unseen behind-the-scenes footage that revealed the man behind the legend. Fans cried watching a young Hogan comforting Make-A-Wish children backstage. They laughed as he pranked the Ultimate Warrior during a tour bus ride. They clapped when footage showed him backstage after WrestleMania 6, hugging every crew member he saw. But perhaps the most powerful moment came from an unexpected place. Paul "Triple H" Levesque stepped forward once more near the end of the show and introduced a clip never before seen by the public. It was Hogan's final visit to the Performance Center just months ago. In the clip, Hogan sat on a bench, talking to a group of wide-eyed NXT recruits. "Wrestling gave me everything," he said. "It gave me purpose. But don't think you have to be me. Be you. And if you give your heart, if you give your everything, the fans, they'll give it back." There wasn't a dry eye in the arena. And then came the finale. The lights dimmed. A hologram of Hogan's silhouette filled the entrance ramp. His voice echoed through the speakers. "What you gonna do, brother?" The crowd finished the line together. "When Hulkamania runs wild on you." Fireworks erupted one last time in his honor. Fans at home reported chills. Comment sections flooded with tearful emojis and gratitude. Old rivalries were forgotten for one night as fans of AEW, WWE, and JPW and indie promotions all came together to say farewell to a man who transcended boundaries. Hogan's final resting place has not been disclosed publicly at the request of his family, but insiders say he will be buried with his signature bandana, his WWE Championship replica belt, and a handwritten note from Vince McMahon that simply reads, "Thank you for everything." In the days that followed, many wondered how WWE would ever fill the void. But the truth is, some legacies are not meant to be replaced. They are meant to be remembered, and Hulk Hogan's legacy? It isn't just etched in titles, merchandise, or highlight reels. It's etched in time. In the hearts of millions who dared to believe in the impossible. In the spirit of every underdog who rose. In the unshakable faith that heroes could be real, even if just for a few hours on a Saturday night. His death reminds us of the fragility of life, but also of the permanence of greatness. The world may move on. New champions will rise. But the echoes of Hogan's roar, the shake of the ropes, the flex of the biceps, the leg drop heard around the world, they will never fade, because some people don't just live. They become legend. And some legends never truly die. As the wrestling world continues to grieve, the reality of Hulk Hogan's absence grows heavier with each passing day. It's not just the fans who are struggling to cope, it's the superstars, the veterans, the production crew, and even the critics who once dismissed his theatrics, but now find themselves quietly mourning the loss of a symbol they never realized meant so much. Hulk Hogan was never just one man. He was an era, a movement, a living embodiment of what wrestling used to be before the lights became brighter and the lines between reality and storyline blurred beyond recognition. There's a certain void backstage now, a silence that wasn't there before. According to those closest to the company, even WWE's tight-knit writing staff has found it hard to work on scripts, many still processing the emotional weight of the loss. One insider shared, "It's like we're missing the heartbeat of the room." You'd think it wouldn't matter, since he hadn't been around weekly in years. But his presence, it was always felt. Always. That presence was so influential that even rival promotions paid tribute in their own way. AEW's Tony Khan opened their latest Dynamite broadcast with a moment of silence and an on-screen graphic reading, "Thank you, Hulk. You paved the way." Over at Impact Wrestling, a compilation aired of Hogan's brief but impactful time in their company, acknowledging his star power even during difficult years. New Japan Pro Wrestling ran a special segment showing a young Hogan in his early days working matches in Japan, long before the fame, long before the colors, when he was simply a hungry American trying to make his mark. But the real stories, they're being told away from the cameras. At a recent WWE talent meeting held in Orlando, Florida, Triple H and Shawn Michaels invited any and all superstars who wanted to speak to stand and share their memories of Hulk Hogan. What started as a short gathering became a 3-hour memorial of laughter, tears, and raw emotion. AJ Styles stood up first. "He was the reason I bought my first pair of wrestling boots," he said. "I didn't care about moves. I cared about moments. And Hulk, he gave us all a million moments." Charlotte Flair, often stoic and reserved backstage, admitted that Hogan once pulled her aside during a WrestleMania weekend and told her, "You got your daddy's fire, but don't forget to light your own flame too." She broke down in tears as she confessed she never had the chance to thank him. Even the younger talents, those who never worked a match with Hogan or even met him in person, spoke up. Braun Breaker, a rising star with a family legacy of his own, said, "He made being larger than life feel possible. Like you didn't have to fit the mold, you could be the mold." And then there was Sami Zayn, who spoke softly but firmly. "We forget sometimes that what we do is theater. But Hogan? He made it feel like church." Outside of WWE, the cultural response to Hogan's passing has also been staggering. News outlets around the world ran specials dedicated to his life. ESPN released a retrospective titled The Immortal One: Hulk Hogan's Impact on Sports and Society, featuring interviews from athletes, actors, and musicians influenced by his larger-than-life persona. CNN called him America's first wrestling icon, while Rolling Stone described him as the ultimate showman, whose bravado masked a surprisingly delicate humanity. Even Hollywood responded with reverence. Chris Hemsworth, who had reportedly been in talks to portray Hogan in an upcoming biopic, released a heartfelt video saying, "If I get to tell your story, I hope I do it justice. Because no one ever played the hero like you did." Meanwhile, theme parks across Florida lit up their evening shows in red and yellow. Universal Studios played his entrance theme in City Walk. Disney World offered a subtle tribute, with their fireworks display forming a giant H in the sky, something fans immediately recognized and shared across social media with the caption, "Even Disney knows who the real hero was." But perhaps the most powerful tribute came not from a celebrity or promotion, but from a fan. A young boy named Tyler, just 8 years old, went viral after posting a homemade video with his parents. In it, he stood in his bedroom, walls covered in Hogan posters, action figures lined up on the shelves, and he said through tears, "I never got to meet you, but I feel like I knew you. You made me believe I could be brave. Thank you for being my hero." The video was shared by John Cena, retweeted by WWE, and eventually aired during Hogan's tribute show. Stories like Tyler's remind us that Hulk Hogan's impact goes beyond the ring, beyond the catchphrases, beyond even the fame. His greatest legacy isn't in the moves he performed, but in the belief he instilled in millions who felt like they had no one else to look up to. And as the days go by, that belief doesn't fade. WWE has confirmed that the next WrestleMania, WrestleMania 42, will be officially dedicated to Hogan's memory. It will be held in Tampa, his home state, and will feature a special opening ceremony where past legends will take the stage to honor the man who helped put WrestleMania on the map. The main event of the night will begin not with fireworks or introductions, but with a 10-bell salute and a video package narrated by none other than Dwayne Johnson, and there are whispers of one final surprise. Rumors suggest that Vince McMahon himself may step into the ring, not to compete, but to speak. To say goodbye. The man who once launched an empire on Hogan's back has remained largely silent since Hogan's death, reportedly devastated beyond words. If the rumors are true, WrestleMania may mark not just a farewell to a wrestler, but a farewell to an entire generation of wrestling, because Hogan wasn't just the star. He was the North Star. The one that guided the industry through its growing pains, through the Attitude Era, through the PG era, and into the modern day. And now, as WWE looks to the future, it does so without its brightest light, yet even in death, Hogan's legacy continues to guide. WWE's charity arm, Connor's Cure, has announced the creation of the Hogan Heroes Fund, a special program aimed at helping terminally ill children meet their heroes, inspired by Hogan's countless unpublicized visits to children's hospitals. Fans are being encouraged to donate in his honor. Proceeds from Hulk Hogan merchandise will now be partially redirected to this cause, and the fans are responding. Shirts bearing Hogan's iconic poses are selling out worldwide. Candlelight vigils have been held in over 30 cities. A mural was painted overnight in Los Angeles depicting Hogan mid-roar, his bandana flying behind him, with the words, "Legends never die." Even those who had once criticized Hogan for past controversies have found themselves softened in his absence. Because time has a way of highlighting the heart over the headlines. And, while no life is without missteps, the final measure of a man often lies in the way he's remembered, not for the mistakes he made, but for the lives he touched. And Hogan touched millions. So where do we go from here? For WWE. It's a return to normalcy, slowly and painfully. The shows will go on. The matches will be booked. The feuds will reignite. But there will always be an empty seat backstage. An unspoken absence. A quiet respect that lingers in the air every time someone tears off their shirt or hulks up in the corner. For the fans, it's a time to remember. To share stories. To wear the colors. To relive the memories that shaped their childhoods. For some, that means watching old WrestleMania tapes. For others, it means dusting off action figures and playing out dream matches that never happened. But for all of us, it means carrying forward the lessons he left behind. To stand tall in the face of adversity. To never back down from a challenge. To believe in yourself when no one else does. And to always ask, what you gonna do, brother, when life tries to pin you down? Because in the end, that's what Hulk Hogan really taught us, that heroes aren't perfect. They're persistent. That strength doesn't come from muscles, but from meaning. And that immortality isn't in the flesh, it's in the fire you light in others. And Hulk Hogan? He lit a fire that will never go out. In the weeks that followed Hulk Hogan's death, the tributes, ceremonies, and headlines began to slowly fade from the front page, but the emotional weight remained. A global mourning period had settled across generations of fans, and though the world kept turning, for those who grew up with red and yellow sweatbands and Hulkamania posters on their bedroom walls, something had changed forever. A constant had been removed from the world. For millions, Hogan wasn't just a wrestler. He was a living chapter in their personal history. And now, that chapter had come to a close, but as grief slowly gave way to gratitude, new waves of remembrance began to surface, not just from fans or WWE, but from voices across the spectrum of popular culture. Universities began announcing pop culture symposiums on the impact of Hulk Hogan's career, citing him as a turning point in the marriage between sports and entertainment. One professor at NYU called him the original influencer before social media ever existed. His reach wasn't just in the ring or on screen. It was in the way people carried themselves, the way they believed in larger-than-life heroes, and the way pop culture embraced exaggerated courage. In Tampa, the city that had become Hogan's adopted hometown, plans are now underway to rename a portion of the Clearwater Beach Boardwalk in his honor. Local residents overwhelmingly approved the idea, with one city official stating, "You can't talk about this city without talking about Hulk Hogan. He brought the world's attention here, and he deserves to be remembered on our shores forever." Murals and street art continued to appear across America. In Detroit, a young graffiti artist created a stunning depiction of Hogan locking eyes with a child in the crowd, reaching out to them as if passing the torch. The piece was titled simply, "Believe." In Mexico City, where wrestling is both sport and religion, fans held a lucha-style memorial parade in Hogan's honor. Thousands of masked admirers marching through the city with banners that read, "Gracias, Hulk." Inside WWE, Hogan's absence became a quiet motivator. In the Performance Center, trainers noticed a shift in how younger wrestlers spoke about their goals. Not just winning titles or becoming main eventers, but creating moments. Hogan taught us that moments last longer than matches, one trainer shared. We're teaching these kids to go out there and make people feel something. That's the Hogan way. And it wasn't just rhetoric. One of WWE's rising stars, Javier Cortez, a Mexican-American wrestler fresh from NXT, dedicated his Raw debut to Hogan, entering with a remix of Real American fused with mariachi brass. The moment went viral instantly. Cortez tearfully pointed to the sky after his win, saying during the post-show interview, "This one was for the guy who taught me it's okay to believe you're unstoppable." The global wrestling community continued to show respect in their own ways. In Japan, All Japan Pro Wrestling held a special 10-man tag match in Hogan's honor, with all participants wearing red and yellow armbands. In Canada, Bret Hart hosted a charity match, with all proceeds going to the Hogan Heroes Initiative. Even in independent circuits across the world, from the UK to South Africa, promotions held Hogan Night events, uniting the wrestling world in a rare moment of universal tribute. And through all of this,